Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So this is just going to be a quick video on the concept of leadership, which I think is severely lacking not only in this country, but many parts of the world. And before I start, I'm just going to read this. Half the harm that is done in this world is due to people who want to feel important. They don't mean to do harm, but the harm does not interest them, or they do not see it, or they justify it because they're absorbed in the endless struggle to think well of themselves. T.S. Eliot. And one of the things I'm going to say is that a lot of people out there, and you have to be careful with a lot of people out there, are kind of like politicians. You ever notice that politicians just make a lot of promises and then they never intend to keep them and nobody really calls them out, right? And so that's how a lot of people in general are. Like they want to feel important about themselves. They're gonna promise you things, and then if you expect them to actually fulfill on it, they'll act like you're weird or insane, right? I've had that happen to me several times in my life, or actually many times in my life, and this is why my expectations of people are actually really really low, right? They're really low, and if you can just do basic things, um, that most people can't do, you'll probably surpass them. I honestly think this is why like what makes me and I don't like to call myself successful just because I know there's like a higher and higher level that I can reach up to. But I think that really puts me in a category that will beat most people just simply because I'm going to do what I'm going to say I'm going to do. And you know what? There's a whole field of literature about leadership. I don't know if you ever read these John C. Maxwell books, but he's got you know, a really big catalog about leadership. 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And I might actually go over this in the exclusive once a month live stream. But my point is here is that there is a ton of literature about what makes a great leader. And if you ever read one of these books, it's like people doing the exact opposite of what's written here, right? So just want to throw that out. Now, here's the thing. This is my crash course in good leadership, right? So good leaders just essentially, if you can do these two things, you're going to beat out 99% of the population, or what I feel like is like 99% of the population. First of all, is you need to communicate well, right? And the problem is that whenever I hear most people talk on stage, I get confused. Like, you ever hear that where it's like, yeah, they're kind of saying something important, everybody's clapping, but you don't have any actionable items or nothing's really clear about what you're supposed to do. And the second thing is that if you do what you promise something, actually do what you say you're going to do, right? My standards are so low because most people a cannot communicate well, and b they don't do what they say they're going to do. So it's just like if somebody actually promised me something, and I don't know if this is just kind of like the state of society, but if somebody promises me something and they actually do it, I'm like, whew, wow, you're special. Like, because most people, they just let me down, right? And I remember like reading, or not reading, watching a YouTube video of, about Gen Z in the workplace. And there was a comment similar to what I just said, where it's just like, if you show up on time, you just do your work, and then you can follow directions, you beat 99% of people. And that's the same thing with leadership, too, right? So, one of the things I want to talk about is that with leadership, you really have to communicate well. And communicating well isn't that hard. Like, I was taking this course about being a landlord, right? And one of the things that the instructor said was that 99% of tenant problems are caused because you either communicated poorly or did not communicate at all. And now, how many of us have problems with the landlord? I know I actually moved out of a house just because like I got sick and tired of the landlord just feeling like not communicating poorly. That's one, but also like wanting to always try to raise the rent, right? And if you raise the rent and everybody else is paying more, that's perfectly fine. But just doing it in a way that makes sense, right? But most people can't do that. So communicate well. So if you're going to be a future landlord, that's the cause of 99% of all tenant problems, right? And just make sure you're going to do what you're saying going to do. So, I think one of the reasons why, you know, uh, every time I message my tenant, and I rarely message my tenant, right? I get a response in like 5 seconds. And why is that? It's because I just do what I say I'm going to do. I remember once upon a time I did an inspection on the house, and then she asked me for like a dishwasher. And I said yes. And you know what? The next day, I gave her the receipt for the dishwasher, right? I didn't have a dishwasher, but she wanted one, and she's paying 6 months in advance. And next day, I showed her the receipt, and she got one. Right now, again, very simple. I would I rather. So, here's the other thing too. Most people would rather steal $1 from you than make $1 million with you, and that's really like the mentality of that's really causing harm in society because most people don't see how they should invest with other people and put in time and effort into a relationship. It's more about bring them in and discarding them, and that's how like a lot of industries work. Again, if you can do the exact opposite of what most people do, right? And this applies to leadership. This applies to being a student. Heck, this even applies to just being a landlord or even being a tenant, right? Um, if you communicate well and do what you say you're going to do, you're more valuable than 99% of the people out there. You really are, right? So there's a reason why things like the anti-work movement exists because so many bad leaders are there in the business space or in the workplace. So many bad leaders who just do the exact opposite. That's why people get frustrated and stressed out and burned out. Okay. All right. So this is a Crane Atlanta mentorship. If you're interested in joining our group, go ahead and click the Google form link below. Other than that, have a great day, everybody. We'll speak next time.